October 1, 1960. Lagos erupts in celebration as Nigeria becomes independent. But what if I told you this historic moment almost never happened? That just months before, secret negotiations were underway that could have delayed independence by years. Uncover the classified talks that nearly changed the course of African history. The story begins in early 1960, when the world believed Nigeria's path to independence was smooth and inevitable. Prime Minister Harold Macmillan had announced Britain's commitment to decolonization. Nigerian leaders appeared united in their march toward freedom. The British Foreign Office files, declassified only in the 1990s, reveal something extraordinary. Just 6 months before independence, senior British officials were seriously considering postponing the handover indefinitely. The trigger was a series of secret reports landing on the desk of Colonial Secretary Ian MacLeod in February 1960. Intelligence assessments warned that Nigeria was on the brink of internal collapse. The Northern People's Congress, led by Ahmadu Bello, was privately threatening to secede if certain conditions weren't met. The Action Group in the West, under Obafemi Awolowo, was demanding a complete restructuring of the proposed federal system. And in the East, Nnamdi Azikiwe supporters were questioning whether they wanted independence at all if it meant being dominated by the North. What the public didn't know was that by March 1960, there were 3 separate independence dates being discussed in secret. October 1 was just one option. The others were October 1961 and even October 1962. Between March and June 1960, a series of clandestine meetings took place across 3 continents. In London, Lagos, and even New York, power brokers gathered in hotel suites and private clubs to negotiate Nigeria's future. The most crucial talks happened at Marlborough House in London during what was officially called a Constitutional Review Conference. But the real negotiations occurred after midnight, in private rooms, with no official records. Sir David Hunt, former British colonial administrator, archival interview, I was there. The atmosphere was electric. Ahmadu Bello arrived with a list of demands that would have essentially given the North veto power over the entire federation. Awolowo countered with proposals that would have made Lagos an independent city-state. Azikiwe just sat there, chain-smoking, saying very little, but the most shocking revelation came from an unlikely source. The Americans, President Eisenhower's administration, concerned about Soviet influence in post-colonial Africa, had been quietly monitoring the situation. CIA briefings from April 1960, later obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests, warned that Nigerian independence could create a Yugoslavia-style fragmentation in strategically vital West Africa. The Americans weren't just observers. They were actively involved in the negotiations. Dr. James Peterson, Cold War intelligence historian, the CIA was running parallel diplomatic channels. They were terrified that a delayed or failed Nigerian independence would create a power vacuum that Moscow could exploit. They wanted the British to proceed, but with guarantees about political stability. By May 1960, the situation had become so complex that Governor-General James Robertson sent an urgent classified telegram to London: Nigerian independence October 1 now in serious doubt. Require immediate instructions on postponement procedures. With just 4 months until the scheduled independence date, the secret negotiations intensified. What emerged was a complex game of brinkmanship that would determine not just when Nigeria became independent, but what kind of country it would become. The northern leaders, led by Ahmadu Bello and Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, presented their ultimatum in a secret memorandum dated June 15, 1960. They demanded guaranteed political control over the federal government, specific revenue-sharing arrangements, and the right to maintain separate legal systems in northern territories. If these demands weren't met, they threatened to request continued British protection as a separate territory. Dr. Chioma Okwu, constitutional historian, this wasn't just political posturing. The northern delegation had already prepared draft documents for what they called Federation withdrawal procedures. They were serious about breaking away. Meanwhile, Obafemi Awolowo was playing his own dangerous game. Western Region intelligence reports, discovered in the Ibadan State Archives in 2003, reveal that Awolowo had been in secret contact with Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah about a possible political union if Nigerian independence collapsed. But it was Nnamdi Azikiwe who held the real trump card. In July 1960, Azikiwe privately informed British officials that the eastern region would consider remaining under British protection indefinitely if independence meant entering an unstable federation. His logic was coldly calculated: better to delay independence than to inherit a civil war. Professor Kalu Ogbu, Azikiwe biographer, Zik was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. He understood that whoever controlled the timing of independence would ultimately control the terms of federation. By August 1960, just 2 months before the scheduled independence date, Colonial Secretary Ian MacLeod was preparing a secret cabinet memorandum recommending postponement. The document, titled Nigerian Independence, Risk Assessment and Alternative Timelines, outlined scenarios for delaying independence by 6 months to 2 years. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: oil. In late August 1960, Shell BP's geological surveys confirmed massive oil deposits in the Niger Delta. Suddenly, the stakes of Nigerian unity became clear to all parties. No region wanted to be left out of potential oil revenues. Dr. Sarah Ahmad, economic historian, the oil discoveries changed everything. Within weeks of Shell's confidential reports circulating among Nigerian leaders, the tone of negotiations shifted completely. Unity became profitable. The final secret agreement was hammered out during a 72-hour marathon session at the Federal Palace Hotel in Lagos, September 12 to 15, 1960. The deal involved compromises that shaped Nigeria's political structure for decades. The North got guaranteed federal political control through population-based representation. The West received autonomy over regional development and education. The East secured control over emerging oil resources. And the British got assurances about protecting their economic interests post-independence. Lord Nigel Fisher, former Colonial Office official, archival interview, by September 20th, we had our agreement. But even then, we kept contingency plans for postponement right up until September 30th. The cabinet had approved delaying independence as late as 48 hours before the ceremony. On October 1, 1960, as Princess Alexandra handed over constitutional instruments to Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa, few in the celebrating crowds knew how close they had come to witnessing a very different ceremony, or no ceremony at all. But the secret negotiations had consequences that extended far beyond Independence Day. The compromises made in those midnight meetings, the regional power-sharing arrangements, the revenue formulas, the federal structure, contained the seeds of conflicts that would eventually tear Nigeria apart in civil war just 7 years later. The classified files reveal a sobering truth: Nigerian independence wasn't inevitable. It was the result of desperate negotiations, strategic compromises, and geopolitical pressures that almost went the other way. Dr. Adebayo Williams. These negotiations show us that independence movements aren't just about freedom, they're about power, economics, and the complex calculations of political survival. The fact that Nigeria almost didn't become independent in 1960 reminds us how fragile these historical moments really are. Today, as Nigeria grapples with many of the same regional tensions that nearly derailed independence 65 years ago, these secret negotiations offer both a warning and a lesson. Sometimes the most important history happens behind closed doors, and the paths not taken can be just as significant as the ones we follow.